Hello everybody, Kyle here. I am here to review the first season of My Adventures with Superman, which was developed by Jake Wyatt, Brennan Clofer, and Josie Campbell. It is an absolutely sensational series. It is, I would say, one of the best first seasons for a comic book movie show, whether it be live action or animation. It is pretty much a perfect season, and it does just an incredible job at depicting the character of Superman in a very, I would say, joyful light that we haven't quite seen in a while. Now, as much as I do love Man of Steel, I do enjoy Superman and Lois, but I feel like this Superman is the Superman that I think a lot of people have been clamoring for quite a while. And I personally don't think that, Superman has to be this way or has to be that way. To me, like, it all depends on who's telling the story. As long as you get to who Clark is, how, being Superman affects his life, and, where he came from, where he's going to go. I do feel like there are elements of the character that are staples in every story, but I'm not one of the people that was upset with Man of Steel because, you know, it wasn't, as some maybe would call it, the happiest film. But then again, if you look at Man of Steel, there's a wonderful sequence when he's flying for the first time. And that is the exact type of feeling I think any Superman fan would love to see from their Superman. And I think Henry Cavill did a great job. But here, Jack Quaid as Clark Kent slash Kal-El slash Superman is just so endearing in this role. And I really love how there is a distinction between his Clark Kent and his Superman, but it's not as night and day as some other incarnations have been, like, say, a Christopher Reeve, where I feel with Jack Quaid's interpretation, his Superman is less confident, I feel, than other Superman that we've seen before. And you can see as he's Clark Kent, he is the exact same way. And it's all about, how kind he's supposed to be and how much he cares for humans. And in the case of the way Jack Quaid plays it, he just does such a great job at giving us a Clark Kent that you can't help but love. And I really do love the way he is trying to navigate the world in a very Superman-esque way, but he also doesn't quite understand the world and himself as some other Supermen have. The way this story introduces him, he doesn't really know who he is. He hasn't gone to, like, the Fortress of Solitude to really learn about his heritage. He doesn't even know until later in the series of the planet that he came from. And I think that was a really smart move for the show because it establishes the character of Clark Kent first and who he is before it delves into who I think Kal-El is and where he comes from. I want to give a shout out to Alice Lee, who plays Lois Lane. I think, and it's hard to say because Dana Delaney is my Lois Lane. She's the Lois Lane I grew up with as a kid, and she really, I think, defined the role for me. I mean, Alice Lee is right up there. She is right up there. Her Lois Lane is quite possibly the best Lois Lane that they've ever done. She just has something to her that really doesn't just make... She's not like a damsel in distress, but she's also... I think what works with this one is that she's really early in her career. I mean, she's an intern. She's not even a Pulitzer Prize winning reporter yet. So you can tell this is the Lois Lane that we're going to see later down the road. The Pulitzer Prize winning Lois Lane, she is all that. But much like Clark is at the beginning of his journey as Superman, Lois is at the beginning of her journey as Lois Lane. And it just makes for such a really interesting take on the character. And then we get to Jimmy Olsen, played by, I believe his name is Ishmael Saeed. I hope I pronounced it correctly. He's just so delightful in this role. It's been a while since we've gotten Jimmy Olsen as part of a Superman crew. Of course, we've had him in Batman v Superman, and he was in Supergirl, but we have not really had Jimmy Olsen as a part of Superman's core group really since Superman. Well, I guess you could probably say Smallville. Although I haven't finished Smallville, so I don't know if Jimmy Olsen is even in that show, but I would assume he is. But it's been a long time, and I feel when it comes to this Jimmy Olsen, he starts off as Clark Kent's friend first, and you can tell that they are really good friends. But then when they both meet Lois Lane, there becomes this moment where they become their own unit, and it makes for a really, fun dynamic. They are this close-knit group, and as the series progresses, you start to see how, when Clark is starting to care for Lois, they're starting to pay less attention towards Jimmy, and you see how that affects him. And I think it's a really interesting commentary on friendships, and when some friends start to date other friends, how that changes the dynamic and how some might feel left out. And I really do like the way they approach it. Jimmy gets himself involved in this situation with Manjor Mala and the Brain, which is a wonderful episode, and Lois and Clark realize they haven't treated him the best way, so they have to go and save him, and it's a beautiful, beautiful episode. But what I also want to talk about is the relationship between Lois and Clark. I think that this one nails the relationship between these two characters, and it introduces Lois as falling in love with Clark Kent before she falls in love with Superman, which is a really smart idea. It makes their relationship feel even more genuine than it ever has, because now, she actually does care about Clark first, and when she finds out in the show that he is Superman, you can see it drives a bit of a wedge between them, but it's something that you believe. Like, you can believe why she would feel bad about this, and they go into it a bit more throughout the episodes where maybe, he wasn't being honest with her. What does that mean for their relationship? Those first number of episodes where they're not technically together yet, but they're just starting out as friends, are really, really sweet, and it gives us a vibe where the last number of Superman incarnations, whether it's Man of Steel, whether it's Superman and Lois, we hadn't quite got to see Superman and Lois in their relationship with, it's hard to explain, but there's always this, in the comics and such, there's always this sense of, awkwardness to their relationship when they first meet, because Clark Kent meets Lois, he likes Lois, and this and that. What Man of Steel did, which was very, very smart, was it kind of flipped the whole thing, where she meets Superman first before she really gets to meet Clark Kent himself. And I love that interpretation, but here we get to see just two people falling in love with each other, and you kind of forget that this is a superhero show, Superman show, because it could be like any other romance office sitcom. It just really, really is that real and that sweet, and it's a shame too because it's on Adult Swim. It's also streaming on Max, but it's like, I do feel like kids would have loved to watch this show, because I don't know how many kids will be watching this show. I will say that for me personally, I grew up with the show called The Batman, which debuted in 2004, and that was a great show where The Batman Begins was coming out in 2005, and they were, I think, trying to bring Batman back into the social consciousness, and The Batman was that gateway show for me where I was able to really get even more excited about Batman, and then Batman Begins comes out. And I think in a way, My Adventures with Superman is doing the same thing, where it's getting more people excited about Superman again. You also have Superman and Lois on TV, and these shows are now allowing people to get excited once we get Superman Legacy coming out in 2025. So we can see that these shows, especially My Adventures with Superman, are reintroducing Superman into pop culture and into the social consciousness. Because it's been quite a while. I've probably said this a number of times, but we, I think, as a society, have been kind of disillusioned from Superman. And I could partly blame this on Warner Brothers and how they've handled the DC universe, where, I mean, we haven't really seen Superman on screen since Justice League back in 2017. So that's been, 6 years where we have been just absent of any Superman content on our screens. And then on our TV screens, we've had Superman and Lois, we've had Supergirl, but I feel that once we get Superman Legacy, Superman is going to come back, and these shows are very important to have out right now, so it eases people in. I want to mention that I think the animation is absolutely stunning. It, of course, is inspired by anime, and so are the villains, which I think it was really cool. They made a lot of them mech suit type villains, so a lot of the technology they use, whether it's Livewire, whether it's Silver Banshee, whether it's even I guess I could spoil it because I've done some reviews, but there's a villain near the end of, actually the very end of the finale, that's introduced for the next season, and that villain is very much tech based, and it looks like very much mech based. And I personally love it because it's something we haven't seen before when it comes to Superman. And it's also something that, what I love about the show is it makes us see the villains in a new light. So when they introduced Slade Wilson / Deathstroke in the show, I didn't even realize that was him until I went on the internet and I was seeing people talking about, oh, that's Slade Wilson. And it was because he didn't have his eye patch, and he was a young man, which is something we rarely see Slade Wilson as. Usually he's much older. So I thought that was a really smart idea, and it really, switches up what we're used to. Task Force X in this show adds to the DC universe. We get to see Amanda Waller, and I think it's really, really cool that they're able to include so many DC characters from outside of Superman's world and put them in here. One of my favorite episodes, though, is very Superman based, and it is Mr. Mxyzptlk, who gets to go on this multiverse journey with Superman. And it's such a great episode because it feels like the show isn't afraid to take risks and push boundaries, because this show could have been a simple, paint by the numbers Superman origin story season 1. But the fact that they end up going through the multiverse, you see the League of Lois Lanes, you actually get a taste at the multiverse and other Superman, Lois Lanes, and possible evil Supermans. So it already, I think, builds upon the world even more. And it doesn't do it in a way that feels like, oh wait, this is too much. Because even in that episode, Mr. Mxyzptlk actually tells Superman about Krypton. So Superman's learning about his own heritage through this multiverse storyline. What's another thing I really loved about the show? The music is great. I think that the way that they depict Superman's speed is really, really fun. They actually have this great sound effect where it's like, I don't know if you can pick it up on here, but it's like very quick, and it's like so fluent and beautiful. Superman gets his powers in different ways, like the episode where he gets his super hearing. You never think about it when it comes to Superman, but he's trying to sleep, and he just cannot sleep because he keeps on hearing people that need help, and he gets exhausted, and that's something that we're not used to seeing with Superman. The action is outstanding, I have to say, and it's really great to see Superman do a lot of stuff, because one of the problems I had with the first season, or two actually, of Superman and Lois was he always needed assistance. Like, he could never, win the battles himself, like whether it was Steel coming in, whether it was his sons, or it was always Superman needing help, where I love how this show, he is like he gets help from time to time, but especially like near the end, like he's really beating the crap out of these bad guys, and he's really winning too, and it's great to see. So yeah, I think that this show is an absolute blast. I really hope that, when we get a season 2, I was so happy to hear season 2. I really hope it explores more of his Kryptonian heritage. I hope we get these new villains. I believe that Lex Luthor was in this season, because they said this one guy's name is Alex, so I think that's him. But we will see if he appears in season 2, and it's just a great show, and I really hope that it takes off. I hope, kids can watch it, because it really is not just an Adult Swim series. It's really for all families. And I would love to see this span a whole new universe of DC animation on television, because I could see a Batman in this world. I could see a Aquaman, a Flash, a Wonder Woman. Give us a Flash or Wonder Woman animated series. Like, we have had them in Justice League, but give us an actual animated series, because I think that would be really, really cool. Especially a Flash one. Could you imagine how many cool things they could do with Flash in animation? Because we've seen it in, whether it's the Justice League animated series, whether it's like Flashpoint Paradox. But man, like, that would be great. So yeah, it's a wonderful series. Please check it out if you haven't already. My Adventures with Superman. It's streaming on Max right now. And let me know what you think if you watched it. Where do you think it's going to go? Okay, guys. Take care. Bye.